All right, we are in the boardroom with Commissioner Mullen and myself. Commissioner Peck has removed himself. We have our administrator, we have our auditor, and we are going to reconvene our budget session. So, Mr. Gonzalez?
Thank you, Chair, and appreciate Tim Anderson. Been working really closely with him, as I said in the meeting this morning. So Auditor's Office has been really great to work with and gracious, and just he's kind of, I feel like he's my right-hand man sometimes. I'm in his office so much, so appreciate him, and I'll turn it over to Tim.
Did we want to, I'm not sure how we want to go about this. I mean, I had gone over this presentation last Tuesday, kind of where we were at balancing wise. And then from that, I mean, really the only thing that's changed since this point was just discussions with IS, Liz and Bo, and some amendments to what they had proposed. But to a large extent, it's I mean, yes, there were some cutbacks on their request, but there's still we're still very far from being balanced, and so it's still the same overarching questions as to how we're going to resolve that. So as I had left off on, as I had mentioned on Tuesday, just with these requests, and for example, the Microsoft 365 one, they had gone down half on that one, so it was down to approximately 80,000. But just with these numbers as presented, with just these items, we're at negative 2.4 million. There's some small adjustments, like I say, on the IS side that would save some on overall requests, but it's still the same questions that we would have as far as what solutions do we want to implement to get to a balanced budget. I guess the one other thing that I did do since the last meeting is I did go through the salary and benefits based on spending this year. We're going to come in probably a little over 1.5 million overall under budget on salaries and benefits this year. And so I had gone through and updated my estimated vacancies for the 2024 budget and increased that from 800,000 to 1.2 million based on how we did this year. And so ultimately I was going to move that 400,000 to ending fund balance. Now, I mean, the board could not want it moved to ending fund balance and just use that 400,000 for spending, but that's at the risk is that we don't have those vacancies. That, I mean, I'm sure departments would like to not have these vacancies be fully staffed, but ultimately it has been a benefit to the county as well. But if we're banking on vacancies that don't happen, then we're ultimately fund balance is going to tail off if we did go that route, and that's also only 400,000 of the $2.4 million plus really of where we're at. So just kind of going over some of the other requests. There's transferring in from reserves. lower ending fund balance, that's, you could take the 400,000 I mentioned, but you could also lower it even more. But these all have effects for future budgets as well as to where we're going to start and end future years. So, there's long-term ramifications from these things. And then property taxes, there's taking the 1% bank capacity and road shifts, road shift as well, road shift options. And outside of that, you have hiring freezes, other cutbacks within departments. Not a whole lot of great options.
And commissioners, I'll say anecdotally, I haven't heard from my direct reports and department heads about staffing levels needing to increase like exponentially, and I'm talking OPD is a different story, but I'm talking like public works. I know we're still trying to hire an extra personnel in facilities, but that's been budgeted, and I think a necessity. I haven't heard from IS asking for more people, so I haven't heard this exponential need for more people. I'm always an advocate of hiring strategically, and if there is flexibility in the budget, helping out those individuals who are really key that we've identified in the Consor study that are just really necessities in the operation, and then of course statutorily necessary. So I think we really need to prioritize because there is flexibility because we've had a lot of people that we haven't hired over this fiscal year. So, if there is latitude there, I can work with Tim to find that. But obviously we have to be fiscally responsible. But I just wanted to make that point. Really taking care of those folks that are just so key to our operation.
I thought I left it in here.
And Tim, can you explain for the public that might watch this about the 1% and the fiscal impact that has on our budget if we take it? It's not a huge one,
No.
but we do as a county have the option to take that each year.
Correct. John could probably speak to it better than I could, the assessor. It's approximately, for this year, it's approximately 110 to 120,000. I do have the number.
And John, if you wouldn't mind stepping on to the mic and putting on your best professor's hat, and some of because there's so much confusion about bank capacity and taking the 1%. Can you kind of put your best professor hat on and explain that to the audience?
So
what
without PowerPoints.
Yeah,
we'll
it's
do
a
our
little
best.
difficult, but the best you can. Thanks.
115,000 is what
Yeah,
I have.
115,000 would be, because it's based off of the highest lawful. So the county's highest lawful, they are allowed to raise that by 1%. And it changed in about 2001 from 6% to 1%. With the understanding that if to restrict the counties, to restrict the tax districts, not just counties, but all the taxing districts from going beyond that without taking it to the people. They felt like they wanted to put more of that decision back into the people's hands, which I personally believe in on that. So you can raise it by 1%. We have not seen 1% minimum growth for many, many years. I mean, what was it last year? We're in double digits on inflation and that, so 1% didn't even keep up with the growth of costs of living and everything else. So this is to help the county offset that.
I think
minutely.
I think inflation was between 8 or 9. Supposedly, I think the real inflation that
wasn't realistic.
I think what people really felt was perhaps even higher than that.
Yeah,
but the
yeah. I
number
seem to
provided
recall a lot
was-
of reports of around 14. So in any case, 1% won't keep up with it, but it does give the county and all the taxing districts, not just the county, but all the taxing districts, the ability to do the 1%. And as I mentioned in the commissioners meeting early, 90-some% of the taxing districts do that every year, because otherwise you can't even begin to keep up. The banked is if you had not used some of that 1%, or if you have a highest lawful, let's say under version 1, the very top left line of 11 million, and let's say the county said, gee, we got a surplus, we're only going to use $10 million. That's all we're going to use. You would keep the other 1.5 million plus 115,000 that in there, plus the new construction, in a banked capacity that you can use later. The drawback to that, and I presented in Pasco Monday night, the city council meeting, the drawback to that is if you bank it long enough and then use all your banked, and the 1%, of course, is in that bank then what happens is it'll drive your levy rates up oftentimes. Pasco's, I think, jumped 24 cents or thereabouts, or 26 cents in 1 year, and then started back down again. Where if you take it each year, it doesn't have as big a drastic impact several years later. Because if all of a sudden you have a $350,000 home that's gone to $500,000, and you've banked that, and then instead of paying it, say $1, or ours at 85 cents, we're going to go to 70. I think if we use everything up totally, what are we at, 83? We still drop. It still drops, but per thousand, but the per thousands went up. So it's less of a hit when there is a hit. It spreads it out over time better for people to absorb on that. And it lets the county have the funds to be able to operate. I mean, my goodness gracious, my paper costs and mailing costs went up enough to chew up 1% more out of my budget, just those office expenses. And everybody has experienced that. So the 1% helps on that.
the 2023 levy rate was 83. At post road shift, it was 85, 85.7.
Right, yeah. But if you curl over to the right, if you did use the road shift, I mean, you'd be at 83. I think, 83.8338.
85, 85 I think is the levy
That's where we're
after.
currently at. And so it would be
okay.
a 2-cent drop, even with the $2 million road shift. And I'm not advocating to do the road shift. I'm just trying to explain how that levy rate would diminish. On the FAR option number one is if you did nothing, of course, the levy rates drop down to 70 cents from 85. So it's a 14.9 cent drop, or 0.14925. Yeah, we carry it out like, now we were 6 decimals, now we're carrying some things out 10 and 11 decimal points on that.
Well, and it generally has been diminished capacity through the years as well, because when you don't take it in 1 year, because of our, what we have seen as diminishing levy rates, then when you take it in a future year, what was
Your
what was
1% is part of your highest lawful. It still is in there, but what happens is if you don't take it and keep that levy rate just slightly higher,
Yeah.
then your new construction the next year that you normally would get more from, you lose off of that new construction. So new construction, if you did nothing next year, would be at 70 cents, okay? If you did the road shift, it'd be at 83. So you'd actually get a higher portion of that new construction that you keep in your pocket for the budget.
But what I was getting at is like for the 115, if $115,000, 1%, if we didn't take that this year, based on what we've seen historically, if you don't take it this year and you wanted to take it as bank capacity next year, it might be 105,000 instead of
It has the
115.
potential, your highest lawful, whatever the highest, it feeds into the highest lawful, and we can still only go, we can't go above the highest lawful. And that goes back to like 1985, so they look back and say, what was your highest lawful from 1985 to current? Well, if you've increased your budgets, the current is always highest, on the highest lawful. So like, that's just the county's share of the 1%. That 115,000 is the county's budget. Every taxing district has the option of doing their own 1% off on top of their highest lawful budget. And almost always we see that. So what I would caution the commissioners on is you cannot offset what the other taxing districts are doing at the sacrifice of your own budget. They're responsible for their budgets.
I do want to point out too that as far as any potential road shifts, that the county road department does have some. They've got their 1% that they can take, which is 39,346, as well as there's $143,000 of banked capacity that hasn't been taken.
Yeah,
as
there's
well.
175,000 that the road department can use. Yeah. Now, last year, the commissioners did use your banked and the 1%. And even at that, though, the levy rate dropped. It went from 90 cents down to 85. You know, so even if you use the new construction you get, you use the 1% and any banked, you'll go down to 71.6 or 0.716 versus 85. You're still going to be dropping 15 cents per thousand just on your budget. Does that make sense? So your levy rate is dropping. No matter what you do here, your levy rate is dropping. It may only be 2 cents if you did a $2 million road shift, but if you just do the 1% and any banked, which the county doesn't really have much in the way of banked. What do we got? $19,000 I think the county has that's in banked. It would still drop the assessment rate, 0.7114, over 14 cents per thousand of your currently 85. That's a pretty significant percentage. It's about 18% or so if you calculated that out.
And John, so there's so much confusion, even with the media, on levy and levy rate. Can you explain that for the public? Because the levy is the overall conglomerate value of property.
Yeah, each
but the levy
taxing
rate,
district,
yeah.
we have to take their budget to the assessed values in that taxing district, and some overlap, of course, and we figure out what is the amount per thousand for each taxing district for their area.
Because you
And
come
then-
up with the levy rate, you
Well,
divide the levy
then we
between
take
the
and
assessed
figure
value.
all of those added together in all the taxing districts. So the Pasco School District would get the people that live in the Pasco School District would be calculating the levy rate for the Pasco
Right.
School District. It will not affect North Franklin County or the Star District,
Yeah,
or those
exactly.
that are in the Othello School District. The people that are in the county, we do not calculate anything from the city of Pasco or city of Mesa or city of Connell for theirs. People in town, anyway, so each taxing district has its geographical area, and we only calculate their amount per thousand based on the assessed value within those geographical areas for them. So you're not paying for services
That
or other
you're not
taxing
getting.
districts
Because I get that question sometimes.
in the
is, why is
district
my
that you
tax bill
live in.
different? Yeah.
Then we have to add all of those up for the 100 different, 40-some different taxing entities and overlaps and so forth to figure out what, say, I would pay on my house. Does not include North Franklin School District, but it does include Pasco School District. Doesn't include the cities of Mesa, doesn't include cemetery districts. I do have the library district. So whatever falls within wherever you live, whatever taxing districts are in there, then we add all of those up, and that's where we get the levy rates. So, here a few years ago, and wasn't that many years ago, within 10 years, we were in $14 per thousand plus. And now the average is down in the mid-eights per thousand for the full taxation. So because the assessed values go up, new construction comes in, it dilutes it down, and the amount you pay per thousand. Now, the values have gone up, so the per thousand certainly are higher, but the levy rates have diminished.
Right, which is one of the biggest confusion is
Yes.
the limit on total taxes collected. You can only increase the levy by 1%, right? And that's
You
where
can
people
only
get
the
that's where they get
budgets by
confused.
1%.
Right, the budget
And then new
slash levy.
construction calculates into it, and then if they have bank goes into it, and then when we get those final budget numbers, we calculate what their share would be to get the levy rate. So it's not like the levy rate can only change 1%. What drives the levy rate? The budgets, without a vote, other than new construction and say anything banked, can't change by more than 1% on the highest lawful. Without a vote. And we have
Right.
had things voted on. Hospital District 1 just voted something in, okay? The schools just voted in the school bond, so those are votes. And that changes the equation because the people then have authorized it.
Can you zoom out on that a little bit, Tim? My copy and I can't find it. There we go. Okay.
You're talking about that long one?
So my question is, Tim, through the versions, how do we get to a balanced budget on version 1? How does that even balance?
It would have to come from reserves, essentially taking all the reserves probably, and really going through and targeting some of the,
Is reserves listed there at all?
no,
What is in reserves?
2.1 million,
Okay.
I think.
All right, that answers my question right there. I don't know what happened to my copy, but is there a chance we could get that printed off?
I'm asking if they can
Thank you.
They're not there. No, she's on vacation. So. I don't believe she does. I don't believe she has access to that. Your best bet, do you have even a smaller size one?
Can we just print that off?
Well, Tim, you've got access to print this, right? They could blow it up on one of the copiers out of your office, the auditor's office?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can.
I have 3 of my key people are vacation this week with the 2 days off already. So,
I can go across, who should I go to?
I mean, if we want to take a short recess, I can probably
Okay.
go do
We'll
that.
take a 5-minute recess. Oh, that's fine, Tim. Thank you very much.
I haven't passed my printing
Okay, we
class.
are back from recess, and we're back into regular session on the budget here. All right, Tim, if you wouldn't mind going through these, if you want to get this back up on the screen and go through each version as to going into the rainy day fund. And are we to the extent that we can for departments and their asks for reduction? And one other question is, hiring freeze, would that limit the people that have positions open from hiring?
Yes, I mean, I think that's ultimately what you would do with the hiring freeze is, yeah, you wouldn't hire the positions that are currently vacant.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, column one, version one is, no 1%, includes new construction, no road shift. So that's baseline, and that's just over 12,026,000. The version two, 1% plus bank capacity, plus new construction, no road shift. So this, compared to version one, gives the 1% plus bank capacity. So you've got the 115,000 of 1% increase and then 19,605 of bank capacity. So you've got an extra 135,000-ish to get you up to 12,161,000.
Okay.
Version three gives you, once again, the 1% in bank capacity plus new construction and then a $350,000 road shifts. So each of the subsequent ones are the same. It's just varying levels of road shift. Version three is $350,000, which gets you to $12,511,000. So approximately 500,000 more than the baseline property taxes. And then version four adds another 150,000 to get you to a $500,000 road shift. Version five is a $1 million road shift, and then version six is a $2 million road shift. I mean, one of the things we could do, depending on the amount of time we want to spend on this, I mean, we could go through the workshop file department by department and look at what the board deems as, actual needs and if we want to approve them. And then from that, we could get a good sense of how much overall we need, what the gap is that we would need to fill with whatever it may be, reserves, property taxes, whatever. We can go department by department with all the requests and get yays or nays on all the different items to actually get to where we're getting to a balanced budget. Barring that, if we had a somewhat of a direction to head, what we're leaning towards, I mean, Mike and I could sit down and go through it the best we can as well, trying to get to that. But ultimately, the plan, I mean, we have the budget adoption hearing on the 4th, Monday the 4th, and then it can be extended through through to the 8th, so the 4th through 8th. So we need to make some progress. And yes, we could go through that task of doing this at that point, but it gets a lot harder too to try to put all of these, because ultimately I still need to get all the different stuff into the system, upload, and make sure that everything balances and there isn't any unexpected things that come up. It can be done, but not as convenient.
And Tim, would our time better be served if I put a bolo out today and we began on the 27th to work with some the department heads and elected officials on identifying necessities versus wants versus needs and what we can live without, and then we wouldn't have to go, because I'd like to get their input. So we know and we get a good idea, and Liz Couples and their group were really good about that. So we've done that with them because they had some high ticket items, and for instance the Microsoft 365, it's something ultimately that we can't get away from, but what we've done to lessen the impact is do it over a series of years rather than
Yes.
So I think we're going to see some things like that where we have to be creative, and a case like Microsoft 365 as an example, our current system, what they do to force you to do it is they don't send what's called patches. So then they leave you vulnerable and they force you to shift to a new platform. So it's things like that, for the public, so they know that we're not just, we want to get Microsoft 365. No, it's because we have to protect, really vital information in the courthouse and have email systems that are secure. So things like that are necessities, versus do I want a new desk or something, so we can go through things like that and work with each department really quickly. Then I think by the time we get to December 4th, we can have a, much more balanced budget for you versus, wants versus needs.
And last year we took a $350,000 road shift.
I think it was right around there.
We got it down to 350,000.
Correct. Last year was, yes.
And when I said that last meeting about the diversion, that, the diversion is, Tim, you might want to just explain that again. The road diversion is the sheriff and his ability to, go ahead. I'll let you do it.
You can bill for services, and so in the past we had billed for, I want to say the number was like $477,000 that was billed from current expense to county roads. So county roads would have to pay that amount for road patrolling. It's like there's like sprinkler,
Water patrolling.
Sprinkler patroller, and then just other patrolling duties and stuff. And so that was something that that has been charged in the past, and ultimately there's some difficulty, I think, getting with the comfortability level of Public Works with the invoices that they were getting. I don't think they felt they were adequate, if I recall correctly, for the reporting that they need to do with the crab board and stuff. And so ultimately we went away from that and went to where we just were doing just straight road shifts, which ultimately it accomplishes a lot of the same purposes, which is moving money from county roads to current expense.
If I may, Commissioner?
Yes.
I just received a couple of emails from other assessors early this morning regarding the difference on the shift versus the diversion and so forth. And it is used differently in different counties. Some of them do the shift, as we have done in this county. Some do a diversion. Jefferson County does a diversion. I just got an email from their assessor this morning to where the diversion is done for the sheriff to be able to hire deputies. And he takes the money he gets from their road department on the diversion to hire deputies but either way, it comes out of the road department's budget and diminishes them the ability to use that money in other ways that they normally would use it anyway. So just 2 cents worth in there from an emails I got this morning.
Okay. And version 3, just to be clear, version 3 would up the road shift 350, would take us back to 700,000.
No, that's just that's just keeping the same road shift as.
Oh, that's
as-
keeping the same road shift?
Keeping the same road shift as
Oh,
20.
okay.
Yeah,
We put that together as those are the total road shift dollars, 350, 500, a million, 2 million, not in addition to what you have.
Yeah, this isn't in comparison to last year or anything. It's just,
Gotcha.
we started with no road shift, and so no road shift this year, and so then it's adding 350 to that.
Okay. So do you want to take that approach then? You guys want to meet with the departments, Mr. Gonzalez? and then
Yes,
see-
sir. Let me put the word out to the department heads and elected officials, and because they work with me and Tim on the budgeting, even on the elected side as well as the department heads I manage. So we can go through their line items really quickly, and so I've met with them on the front end, so I'm familiar with what they've proposed, as is Tim. So we can go through there really quick and see. I'll say there really hasn't been a tremendous amount of asks from the other departments. I would say IS, because the nature of IS is they're purchasing for other people, so they're
purchasing for all departments.
right. So it looks like it's a little bit of a misnomer because their requests look like they're really robust for themselves, but it's actually they're working on behalf of other departments. So but when I'm just trying to think and scan right now. Facilities didn't really ask for a tremendous amount.
No department did.
Yeah,
It
OPD, where I see next year, the cost of doing business for OPD just increases and increases and increases, and it's clearly not their fault. It's the market, the way it's going, and we're competing against Benton County for their lawyers. I won't name any names, but there was a group of lawyers who are high-level attorneys that work on our side in Franklin County, and they do our felonies. So across the river, they're giving them $40,000 more per year a contract. So they're already negotiating, saying, "Hey, Larry Ziegler, our partners across the river they will give us $40,000 more each," and they're our top attorneys in that space. So this is the kind of wage pressure that we're feeling. I feel a little bit better that we've been working with the legislature to try to get that funding mechanism and do some other things, but that could be 2 years off, 3 years off the way the speed of government moves. So that's my number one fear is finding the money for OPD, because it feels like it's a never-ending shovel of sand on the beach that never stops.
I know Liz and IS has been very, very good to work with on that. We were able to find another 20% that we could cut out of the request that we had sent up to her office, and her and I worked on that, which was not huge, but it was another $5,000-6,000 that we could cut out of the request. So she's been good to work with on that stuff.
So we do have a rainy day fund that we could pull out of that we've built up over the years. I hate to do that, but I think we need to meet with the departments, find out necessities to wants, and then we're gonna have to make a decision.
Yeah.
You want to schedule another budget hearing after next meeting on the 29th? To continue this after you meet with them?
I think it would be wise if we can.
Yes, the more we meet, the better.
Yeah, because I think we'll have better clarity.
Yeah, because
On
I
what-
already got it clarified that
Right.
the road shift isn't growing 350. That's just what last year's was. So
So
I thought that was a growth of 350, and the other zeros is we were going to stay where we were at.
And I also want to send out to the public, Chair, that we run really lean. It's just
It's a
we
tight
have
ship.
yeah we really do run a tight ship. So we don't we don't have an excess of employees running around here, and we do the best we can. You know, really, we exceed what we can do based on the amount of people we have, is what I'm learning. So I want to definitely send that out to the public. It's just we are structurally set up different than a city because we don't get the same sales tax revenue. We don't have the robust coffers. We don't have the revenue generation. You know, they're able to have basically a water company that creates revenue for them. Yeah, so they have different systems set up, and John, you could probably speak to this more, between property taxes and sales tax. They have more money coming into the system, and then they're
astronomically more.
Then they have enterprise funds, which can make them money. And,
Even their, even the money that they receive from the highest lawful on the property taxes is more than the county gets.
right.
Just what the city of Pasco gets.
So yeah, it's because people often ask me, Mike, you guys you have so much money hanging around the county like the city does, and I explained to them structurally we're set up different with our funding mechanisms, and we do have certain tax revenues that come in, like mental health tax, the criminal justice tax, certain road taxes that come in, but those can only be used for specific sources. So we could have a fund, just to give the public a few examples, like our .09 funds. Right now, Tim, I think we have $5 million in there, but those have to be used for a specific purpose. We couldn't take those funds and say, hey, we're going to give them to staff to support salaries so we can keep jobs. We have to use those for specific purposes, as do our mental health tax, the criminal justice tax that goes to support the jail system. So while we have different revenue sources coming in, we can't use them for personnel like you think we would. So it becomes very complex. And again, the overarching reason I'm on my soapbox right now is I don't want the public to think that we're out there, spending taxpayer dollars frivolously, because that's not the case. And the other element, and I'll be quiet, is the cost of doing business. Just you think of public works, cost of gas. I mean, they're running around the roads all the time trying to keep those inflation, supply chain issues. All these things have impacted government so exponentially, especially when our revenue sources, they come in a consistent way. And if we're not getting the sales tax like it was, or property tax, it affects us pretty mightily. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, John, if you want to add anything.
Well, if the public takes a look at, say, a levy rate at $8.50 or $9 per thousand, and they multiply that by the thousands that they've got, and they're paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or more in property taxes. When this county is getting, on a $500,000 piece of property, you're going to get about $350 to operate this entire county.
Right.
It's minimal compared to, it's less than 10%. We were up at like 12 or 13. It's going to be less than 10% or close to 10% of everything that they do. And yet the county services that they provide just off of the property tax income is massive. Public safety and all that. We don't have the other sources of revenue. Like, we don't get the higher sales tax percentage, and we don't have an entire irrigation or city water system and so forth. So it is difficult, because I look at it statistically and go, gee whiz, 12, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, we were $1.70 some, and now we're going to be down to 70 cents. That's great, but the county growth.
The thousands are going up.
They are.
The increase in
They absolutely
and the
are.
evaluation's going up. So
Clint-
it might be 70, but the
It-
burden of tax is still going up on the individual.
Well, except the portion dollar-wise that the county is getting overall on that big one. I would venture to say that a $250,000 home, say 12 years ago, the amount of money that this county actually got for their budget versus a $500,000 home now, they got more money for the county's budget then than they do now, just the way the system has worked out. So now overall, yeah, when you start paying 8, 9, I mean, there's places in Benton County that were at 14. We were at 14 not that long ago in areas of this county, dollars per thousand. So the only thing that helps minimize that is new construction, because assessed values are going up, but that counts in that piece, so it helps offset it. Certainly, year before last, and year before that, we were in the 200s. When you start talking doubling, or at least doubling the amount of new construction, that makes a big difference on the budget stuff. It really does, on your highest lawful.
So I see Bo from IS came in. Did you come in to comment on something? Listen? Okay. Well, on your list of wants, which are for every department, I appreciate the fact that you guys have reduced the Microsoft, is it Microsoft, what was it?
365.
365. You cut that in half, and so we're going to implement that over years. Is there any other of these that we can do the same on, or?
We've scaled back to build up over a longer period of time, because as these change, they turn into a subscription base, just like a
Right.
Netflix
That's what Mike
subscription.
explained to us. If you don't keep up with it, you're
Yeah, and eventually that cost is going to increase over the years, and that is how Microsoft has built their, thank you. That's how they've built their, business structure, is that you're paying subscriptions instead of what we've traditionally done is we bring in a solution on site and it's supported for 10 years. We're getting very close to the end of that 2016 support cycle, which would end in the fall of 2025. So we would need to have something else in place because those security patches would end in September of 2025. And then you start worrying about cybersecurity at that point.
Will we have everybody into the 365 by that time?
The
Doing it.
goal was to try to do that with 2024. That spreads it out over the course of a year and a half, if you will. So that's easier for us to manage. So I would
And
say
it will
yes,
get
we could.
everybody compliant by that time.
Yes. Yeah, historically, we've made sure we were very clear on the deadlines to make sure the support was there. And we continue to make sure that the county is protected for cybersecurity in that respect. So we've scaled back. Our original request was for about $161,000, and that was including about $11,000 in implementation with a vendor to help us get started, and then the rest is just subscription fees. If we scale that back, that does allow us to drop the cost that's going to be required for 2024 and moving forward, because it's ongoing. We have the cloud backup on there on line 21. That is required because we're required to keep our files for public records. And so if you're creating stuff in the cloud, you also have to back up the cloud. So it goes hand in hand, it scales together. And so if we slowly roll this out, we can reduce the cost, just knowing that ultimately we will be up to about 140,000 year over year moving forward. And that's if Microsoft doesn't increase the cost moving forward. They don't increase it too much, but you're always at risk for that. Some of our other requests, line 23, 24, we had requested for 2 server replacements. Unfortunately, this year we had some failed hardware that was not recoverable, so our flexibility that we like to maintain is not there. If we don't get it next year, it's just one hardware piece away from failing any department's server and operations. I'd like to be able to say we can do without, but I would hate to risk it. The only other thing that Liz really stood out on here was line 19. This is a device for the courts, and we list it as a spares kit. You know how important court is. If we lose something, it takes months to get this hardware. We have ordered it this year, but it's just not going to get here through supply chain until well into next year. So we won't be able to pay for it with 2023 funds. We'd have to pay with it for 2024 funds.
Gotcha.
And that's like committed dollars right there. It's
Did you
not,
already have that in your budget for 2023?
I believe we did.
And we haven't used it, so it's still there, right?
I would have to verify with Liz.
Okay.
The only other things on here is the corrections video projects. We have scaled that back if we are able to do this. We are talking about a system that is functional right now. But as with PCs and other technology, it is only good for a certain period of time, and then technology starts dying on you. So we're looking to scale that back so we can, as you say, tighten our belts. But as of right now, the systems are running, and we do have monitoring software on those, so we can keep a fairly good idea of what's causing trouble and what needs to be taken care of. The other line 27 is, as John was saying earlier, this is software to support them, and they've already tried to reduce some of the functions of what they're asking to try to tighten the belts and make this happen.
We appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Always available for questions.
I know.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So, I think they've ratcheted that back as far as they can. I think the sheriff would be one you need to meet with and ask about his foundation and the uniforms and see where he can cut back, because those were the two biggest departments, right?
Yeah, law and justice, I mean, in general, 70% of the budget, I mean, depending.
67.
Yeah, close to that. So, yeah, I can work with the sheriff and ask him where he needs cuts. I know overtime has been a issue for them. They've, in his budget proposal, they've been getting a tremendous amount of public records requests, and I think another issue, and Tim can maybe speak to this a little bit, is in corrections, they've had wage pressure just with overtime because the staffing levels have been, it's tough to get corrections officers these days. So what winds up happening is to fill the slots, you always have to get into overtime. That's kind of been an issue for them quite a bit, is what the sheriff was telling me.
Yes, they've had, within corrections, they've had vacancies, and so to fill those gaps, they've wound up spending more on overtime than they would otherwise, and so there's a balance between the positions and overtime. I mean, just because you have a vacancy, you're not saving 100% of that vacancy, if anything, because you're having the overtime with it.
So I don't know what Commissioner Mullen's thinking, but after looking through this and the predicament we're in, between version 4 and version 5, I hate to increase the road chip, but if we add 500 onto the road chip up to 850, finding out the further we can cut, taking $1 million out of the rainy day fund, maybe where would we be then? That is with the 1%.
It's,
You'd have to do some figuring.
yeah, I'd have to do some figuring, because with some of the adjustments from IS, and I think just meeting with some of the other departments, maybe we can trim some of the other stuff. But as I mentioned too, even in the $2.4 million number, I think there's stuff in there that are probably necessary that I didn't have in the list just because they weren't big dollar. And so there's certainly going to be some adds to that $2.4 million, but hopefully there's, some more significant subtractions as well. But to to give any concrete number. It would be,
No,
It'd be
I'm just throwing that
difficult.
out there so you
Yeah.
can do maybe a figure on that. I don't know where Commissioner Mullins thinking, but we've got to sure up this budget so we can get it passed on the 4th through the 8th.
and at least, well, Commissioner Didier, you were in the Budget Review Committee meeting yesterday, and
Yes.
I think the thought is that we're, going into it seems like sales tax aren't as good, so it seems like there may be some troubles for the economy on the horizon, and if that's the case, then this isn't a one-time budget issue. I mean, we could, if you're talking about taking $1 million from the reserves, I mean, that, good or bad, that's a one-time fix, and this is potentially a long-term problem where expenses are just outpacing revenue. So just something to keep in mind that, that may solve the problem for 2024, but we need a solution for 2025 onward as well.
And to be optimistic, I'm looking for good things out of HWL. And I know we got properties out there that are very appealing to people. And I think we have other options that are not even being discussed, but it's something that we can't put our hands on right now. So to fix this year for this next year's budget, I think that we've got to get this in place. And then we look for good things at HWL and the properties out there that we can maybe leverage to rebuild our rainy day fund. So that's my thought process.
I think there is hope there because they're going to present their plan to us in December, and they do have a developer's eye. So, having had some brief conversations with Larry, he didn't go in depth with me, but that is part of his strategy is to see could we perhaps sell some parcels, could they be developed, what they're worth, and I know that's pretty fertile ground out there, isn't it, John, in that area?
It is, yeah. The property that's out there is worth a sizable sum.
So I mean, we own we own all of it. so
And
that's
it too could be squandered and we could be right back in this.
yeah, it
predicament.
could. So there's a lot of options that we're looking at, and we started those talks with Pasco about the Hapo Center. So
I would caution the commissioners or anybody use that money for budgetary purposes. It'd be great for reserves.
Yes, that's what I
Yes,
said. Rainy
like you
day
said,
fund. Rebuild it
absolutely.
up.
Yep.
So with that, then why don't we recess until you have a chance to meet with
Okay.
the departments, and then we'll continue
Yes, sir.
this next Tuesday.
yes, sir. I'll start contacting the various departments with Jennifer, and we'll get to work. Probably we'll start. I'm sure most people are gone for starting to leave for Turkey Day, but we'll reconvene with everybody Monday. But I'll start putting out the feelers now, and when they get home from Thanksgiving, we'll get
And
get
maybe
to work Monday.
Maybe meet with OPD too, and sort of get an idea of the shortfall there. That he's down to $45.
Yeah, it's pretty critical right now, and
I know.
and the costs, and it's no fault of the department because they're running the department as lean and as best as they can, but there is something called the Constitution of the United States that you have to provide, especially indigent defense, and there's 60-day trials that you have to meet those guidelines. So I really feel for Larry because every day, he goes, gosh, another bill, and they're raising the amount that the lawyers want. So
Yep. All righty. So at this time, we'll recess until next Tuesday.